I have this old, faded Polaroid picture in a frame in my office at home. I found this photo one day when I was going through some of my mother's scrapbooks. And as I flipped through, I'm like, oh, I've got to have that one. So I took it. The photo is of my older brother and me, dressed up for Halloween in 1972. I was 4 years old, and he was 7. I am dressed in a spiffy cowboy costume with a 10-gallon hat and a fringed vest. My brother is the devil, dressed in a red hoodie complete with little horns and a plastic pitchfork and a mustache and a goatee painted on with eyeliner. Now, I love my brother, and he is a very good person, but I couldn't resist scanning this photo and sending it to him last year for his birthday, asking if this costume might be a harbinger of things to come. He appreciated the humor, but he also took the time to remind me that 3 years later, I was the one wearing the devil costume when we went out trick-or-treating, and he had a photo of that he could send to me. For me, Halloween has always been one of the best times of the year. I have so many fond memories of dressing up and going door to door with my friends to get Snickers bars and Reese cups from the neighbors up and down our street. Every Halloween when I was a kid, we would save one house for last and go there at the end of our candy collection route. This was the home of my friend Suzanne, and her mom was, well, shall we say, a bit dramatic. Suzanne's mom pulled out all of the stops. You would ring the doorbell and she would appear, dressed head to toe in some wild costume. The whole house would be transformed into a ghostly manor, complete with props and lighting and sound effects. Going to her house was like having our own private spook show right on my street. This taught me that adults can enjoy Halloween as much as kids do. I read somewhere recently that Halloween is second only to Christmas as the most popular American holiday. I think this is because Halloween speaks to some deep human need that we all have. Christmas is about hope. Halloween is about fear. And we all have hopes and fears. This day at the end of October gives us a once-a-year opportunity to invent our own make-believe monsters and to let the more sinister parts of our imaginations run wild. There's something very therapeutic about having a good scream. We need to celebrate the things that scare us. Halloween lets us face our fears in the safe setting of manufactured evil, evil that we create and have control over. This is both mentally and spiritually helpful because there seems to be so much evil out there the rest of the year that we cannot control. In this sometimes dangerous and threatening world, Halloween lets us put evil in its place and know that we can and we will overcome it. Just like in a vampire movie or one of those zombie shows on Netflix. But while we seem to have no problem coming up with amazing and creative ways to celebrate Halloween and to scare the heck out of each other, we still struggle, it seems, on the other 364 days of the year to get a handle on evil. I think that maybe this is because we want to treat evil like it's Halloween every day. Our culture encourages us to label everyone as either a hero or a monster. It tells us to see everything in life through the lens of good and bad, right and wrong, with no middle ground. We brand other people as angels or as demons, depending on whether we agree with them or not. I mean, just look at this election, right? Each political party will tell you in no uncertain terms that if the other side wins, the devils among us are going to take over. We are told over and over again that not only the ideas promoted by certain politicians are wicked, but the people themselves. And we cannot compromise with Satan unless we are all to be damned. We have let our fears, our uncertainties, and our differences manifest into a world that so often feels like one long, endless, and epic battle between evil and divine forces. Why do we do this? It's exhausting. It hurts. I think one reason is that, like it or not, we live in a society shaped by Western religion. A recent Gallup poll found that 68% of Americans say that they believe in the devil. Interestingly, when asked about this belief in the devil, Southerners were 25% more likely to answer yes than those who live in the Northeast or the Midwest. And 79% of Republicans responded yes, compared to 67% of Democrats. These ideas are deeply embedded in our culture, and they come directly from the teachings of our dominant religions. If we look for the origin of all of this, we will see that while there are references to the devil in the Hebrew scriptures, particularly in the book of Isaiah, and a few in the Christian Gospels, no real facts or specifics are laid out there. It was not until the Fourth Lateral Council in the year 1213 that the Catholic Church made specific decrees and doctrines about who and what the devil really is. It's in the Lateral Council's proclamations where we find the story of Satan as a fallen angel who was overcome by his desire to be God and was banished to an underworld. Here are the roots of the idea of the devil and his demons coming to tempt us and cause us to do wrong, starting, of course, with Adam and Eve and that apple. Many of our most popular ideas about the devil, such as the image of the red horns and the pitchfork, aren't biblical at all. They're not even theological. They come from Renaissance literature, works like Dante's Inferno. While the number of Americans who say they think that demon possession is real and who believe in a supernatural Satan has been steadily declining in recent decades, we still hang on to much of these traditional teachings in one way or another. And that can perhaps be a good thing if we consider it carefully. In the story that was created by Christians in the 13th century, what caused Lucifer to be cast out and become destined to reign over a land of suffering and misery was his own selfish desire, his own need to become all-powerful, to be just like God. If we consider this for what it is, a moral story, and look at the central message that it contains, we find it does in fact say something very important, something about why evil happens. Just like in Satan's fall from grace, evil manifests when we put ourselves above the common good and let our own desires for power and control overcome our ability to serve others and to live in connection and compassion and humility. The problem, I think, for many of us today with the story of Satan is the same problem we have with many other religious teachings. Fundamentalist religious people want and insist on taking it all literally, and in doing so, ignore the deeper moral teachings. Liberal religious people, like many of us, reject it altogether because we cannot take it literally, and thus we lose sight of its deeper moral teachings as well. In personifying evil, just as in personifying God, we run the risk of making evil and goodness into forces that exist where? Out there. They're not. Oscar Wilde famously said, "We are each our own devil, and we make this world our hell." I look around and I think maybe he's right. Throughout our history, Unitarians and Universalists have been religious people who affirmed that one of the greatest gifts of our creation is our ability to make choices, both good choices and not so good choices. Early American Unitarians and Universalists believed that the cause of evil was not the devil, but rather our own ignorance and fears, our own deprivation and desperation. This led them to be committed to things like public education, to prison reform, to suffrage and the abolition of slavery, and to a whole variety of efforts to help and support those in need and those victimized by others. Our religious ancestors taught that the only response to evil and to injustice was to cultivate the goodness within us and within others through our thoughts and our attitudes, and especially our actions. I think this is what I see us doing today, right here at All Peoples, as we engage in get out the vote efforts and educate our neighbors about Amendment 2. This is what our children are doing right now during our service as they go door to door to collect donations for the Eastern Area Community Ministries Food Pantry. This is what we're doing as we begin the process of living into the 8th principle, which we voted to adopt last Sunday. And as we start exploring how committing to dismantle racism and systems of oppression might look like, might feel like, might be like right here in our church community. None of this makes us good people and others bad people. It doesn't make us angels and those on the other side devils. It just means that we are trying our best to live with and to overcome our own temptations to crave power over connection, to seek comfort over justice, and selfishness over the greater good. In our reading this morning, Bruce Marshall said, "Rarely does evil enter this world through self-acknowledged bad people doing bad things. Evil enters the world as ordinary people pursue those ordinary dreams and ambitions of life. We must never cut ourselves off from the suffering of others and think that we are not involved." I think that he is saying that the devil is not real, or at least doesn't have to be, unless we let him be. It is not only the intent of our actions that matters, but also the outcomes. And it does us little good. It does anybody little good to label those that we disagree with as evil, while we fail to look closely at the consequences such judgments have. All this takes me back to that Polaroid photo of me and my brother from an October so many years ago. This Halloween, whether or not you're celebrating Halloween or Dia de los Muertos or Samhain or All Saints' Day or All Souls' Day, I invite and encourage you to have fun with it, to eat lots of candy, to explore and imagine evil at its most delicious and frightening. But then, on Tuesday or Wednesday, remember that it is all never that simple. And while this year, it may be your older brother who looks like the devil, on some future date, it might be you with the horns and the pitchfork. In our real search to overcome all that hurts and harms us, we must remember that we are all capable of evil, and we are all capable of good, and that we are all responsible for making choices about both. Happy Halloween to you. Amen, and so may it be. Our closing hymn this morning is number 1024, When the Spirit Says Do. I invite you to rise in body, spirit, or voice, and let's sing. We end our time together this morning, extinguish the light of our chalice with these words from the poet May Sarton. May we always be hopeful gardeners of the Spirit, knowing that without darkness, nothing comes to birth, as without light, nothing flowers. May the frights of this coming week bring you delight and make your real fears easier to bear. Go in peace, my friends, and share some love in Louisville. Amen. So may it be.